the stories that I have uncovered about the inner Earth is that very early on in the history of the Third Reich, the Nazi elite, and especially Hitler, were trying to establish contact with a civilization living in the inner Earth, which was considered an Aryan civilization of a lot more advanced nature than their brothers, lost brothers living on the surface of the planet. The Tous society carries the name of the former capital of that civilization, someplace around present-day Greenland, before the previous polar shifts and before Greenland became under ice. Two expeditions were made in the late 30s, early 40s, one attempting to enter the North Polar water opening with a submarine, which proved unsuccessful. A second attempt was made to enter the land opening on the South Pole with an anti-gravity cigar-shaped device, basically a small prototype probably of the giant Andromeda space station that was developed later on by the SS, and it proved successful. The most interesting story is the one that I heard by an American living in Florida who claims to have spent 2 months in the city of New Berlin. This is a city that was developed into the inner Earth, and a part of the Germans from the South Polar colony were admitted by the inner Earthlings and were allowed to build that city there. Very strict admission procedures, no previous SS members, no previous concentration camp guards and so on were admitted. The rumor is that the present-day city of New Berlin is about 2 million people of population, that they have built there most of the buildings that Hitler's personal architect, Spee, was planning to build. They're traveling on Icelandic passports. They are basically the new master race that is probably planned by the Illuminati to repopulate the planet. And there is even a rumor that there is a New Berlin embassy in Washington on an unmarked floor of a high-rise building. You probably punch a code on the elevator buttons, and when the elevator stops on that floor and the doors open, you see the sign of New Berlin in the lobby. The kids of the New Berliners study in major institutions around the globe, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, Yale, and basically it is not a Nazi colony that is established in the hollow earth as an enemy of the present-day American and English Illuminati secret government. On the contrary, it is just basically the other side of the same coin. Some would even coin the new word, the Illuminati presence on the planet, that basically the World War II Nazis and the present-day Illuminatis in America are nothing more than the two sides of the same Illuminati coin. So basically this is a colony, a presence in the hollow earth that has been established with a shoulder-to-shoulder cooperation of the Russians and Americans, organized, orchestrated, and performed through the quiet cooperation of the Illuminati government.
After World War II, a military expedition under Admiral Byrd tried to recover the vanished technology. The extraterrestrials let him enter the inner Earth to the Golden City. They delivered a request message for disarmament to the government of the United States. Admiral Byrd had to remain silent until his death, but after he died, his nephew published his diary.
In my work with South African, Brazilian, and American geologists at the South Pole, it is clear that under the structures of ice, there are many layers of civilization, suggesting at one earlier point of time when the conditions of the South Pole were different. Clearly, there was some type of civilization there. The evidences of huge dinosaur intelligence suggest that this was one of the possible places for the Garden of Eden. This, of course, is assuming that the shell of the Earth had a different north and south magnetic pole. And with the shifting of the pole, this region became suddenly very very frigid, and thus we do not see any evidences on the surface of these so-called earlier conditions of intelligence. However, I believe with the further exploration of the documents that both Admiral Byrd brought to the attention of the world after World War II, and the Brazilian Navy uncovered in 1961 with its subpole expedition, that extraterrestrial intelligence is also operated out of the area of the South Pole. And in that sense, the South Pole is a connecting point with other civilizations, possible extrasolar gardens of paradise.
What was it that Admiral Byrd found on the South Pole? Incredibly enough, in an official American Navy documentary film, we found footage of what Admiral Byrd found on the South Pole. He found giant freshwater, never freezing lakes with areas around them that were free of any snow. And in that film we show footage of the Navy planes landing in these lakes. But even more so, he found, to his amazement, that his planes were disappearing very quickly. A lot of his planes were attacked by anti-gravity devices that were operated by the Germans there, by anti-gravity saucers. A lot of them crashed into invisible barriers and disintegrated in mid-flight. This is an indication that the Germans had already perfected the force field shields, and they were up and operational around the German colony at Neuschwabenland. When he was retreating, basically the whole operation lasted for 1 week. They started at the end of February 47, and by the first week of March they were through with the whole operation, and much earlier than scheduled, and they departed. And in an interview at Buenos Aires on his way back, Admiral Byrd made the incredible statement that the Third World War would probably be with an adversary coming from the polar regions of our planet, an adversary that has the ability to fly unobstructed from pole to pole. He was referring to the Germans at their South Polar colony at Neuschwabenland that were operating their anti-gravity craft with impunity and could fly circles around the globe, and of course would shoot out of the sky any of the attacking American planes.
The inner terrestrials surrounded the entrance gates with an
In 1961, the Brazilian Navy was conducting a series of experiments in the Antarctic. According to one of my colleagues who was in one of the naval ships, suddenly out of the ice packs, a large spacecraft emerges and takes off vertically at a terrific speed, shocking both the American and the Brazilian naval forces that were there. So it is clear that as late as 1961, we have official documentation from the Brazilian Navy that there is some other, emphasize other, underline this 3 or 4 times, life force or intelligence stationed at the South Pole, possibly to observe the scientific developments on the planet, possibly to observe the military operations and the forces of the East and the West in some type of Mexican standoff as the Cold War develops. We have clear documentation from other sources and other South American governments that some technology that is not human-based is there. That is to say, some type of higher evolutionary experience is there, and this is the next chapter of our quest. Why are they here? What do they want from us? And do they, namely the higher or alien intelligence, have, as it were, some type of directing mechanism both for the US as well as for the Soviets as to who goes into space and who conducts, as it were, the next evolutionary round of space development? These are key questions that we must resolve.
Also, gigantic cities of lights will descend out of their orbit to selected areas and will be anchored on the Earth. Right now, people who have reached a certain level of consciousness and are once again connected to the cosmic monad are drawn through their intuition to places chosen by the spiritual hierarchies in order to anchor the cities of light above these areas. These sites are absolutely secure. The Space Brothers and the spiritual hierarchies have created the so-called Islands of Light, where the Earth's frequency was increased, so that all human beings and light workers can find each other on that level. Such areas are recognized by the fact that they attract an especially high number of people dealing with higher knowledge. These places have a higher grid anchorage. They are places of power, activated chakras, entrances to inner Earth, and a present UFO surveillance. The Space Brothers are going to pay special attention to these areas when the cataclysms begin, because that is where the seed for the new mankind will be found. That is where the first contacts will occur on a physical and telepathic level. Many small and large centers, shelters of peace, will be established by spiritual people who live together, who work on themselves and teach others. To the new mankind, these sites will be study centers and the new initiation centers for the Universal Brotherhood. These islands of light are recognized by the fact that they do not belong to a certain denomination or sect, but that they are open to every reality, and that they know that many roads lead home. The highest goal is to increasingly live our lives and love ourselves. This time there will be no arch, because man himself is the arch.
Again, as we raise the consciousness and we transform our body from a state of corporeality, which means this type of substance, you see, and as our atoms and as our molecules and as our energies speed up, the DNA system is totally transformed into a higher octave and a higher frequency, so that there is a whole new strain coming in as a result of this. When we're passing through, for instance, the photon belt, there will be no darkness. It's all light. Everything in the body, then, of importance will be etheric in nature as opposed to corporeal or dense or density or whatever you see. Realities that we accept today will be no more. And so as a result of that, the DNA system and everything which constructs humanness will be changed, because we will now reach for a light body and will be of the light as opposed to darkness and corporeality. So any change that's signified today scientifically or biologically and what have you in the DNA is because of this infusion of new consciousness and new light, which of course is coming in at this point in time. Many of us are, many people already are largely light, although they keep the body of corporeality to do what they have to do here on Earth, you see. Many people are already in the fourth dimension. Some are aware and some are not. But that's where we all have to go. And of course, by 2011, as we pointed out, all of us have the option and the privilege, if we choose to do so, of being in the fifth dimension.
The photon belt is an intense field of photon radiation, light radiation, which both according to several modern astronomers, astrologers, as well as the Mayan tradition, emanates from the center of our galaxy, bisects the Pleiades star system and our star system at the same time. And the current period, we are moving in and out of this photon belt, spending several months in it every year. That the frequency that we spend in the photon belt is increasing by approximately 2 weeks every year. And according to the calculations of the Mayan calendar, around the year 2011, 2012 AD, we will be fully within the photon belt, and we will remain within the photon belt until around 4000 AD, according to the current calculations. And some of the work of both Jose Arguelles, other researchers, seems to suggest that the Mayans knew about this cycle, that every so often, many thousand years, we go in and out of the photon belt, that there seem to have been cultural as well as different climactic and earth changes that perhaps were sort of stimulated or affected by the entering and going out of that photon belt in the past history of the Earth.
We are changing both DNA and RNA in many of us. Many stones, many vehicles here are changing our chakra systems also. There are no longer 7 chakras in most of us. We are opening up new chakra systems. You'll see much more about this in the next 5 or 10 years also. You'll begin to activate many more of them, and also your DNA and your RNA will not be replicating in the same fashions. There are children who are being born who are conscious when they are born. And this will change also a lot.
The Dark Ages. During the rule of a dark age of separation, all knowledge that is passed on and all instructions are tainted. Every religion, for instance, is a sect, a separation from the real divine inner truth of life. Religion is something that happens in God's holiest temple. Man himself in the depth of his heart and in communication with his divine inner self. Throughout the Dark Age, countless fallen sun cosmologies who have dogmatic religious views reached the earth and became our religions. They represented the climax of separation from oneself. God's channels, prophets and mediums received their messages from the God-created and separated dimensions. Most often, the pure messages were mixed with information from the astral worlds and their own ego. There are as many truths and religions as there are worlds and heavens of polarities and levels of development in the cosmos in their different dimensions. Every social structure which serves the power of the lobbies and the ego instead of mankind is a split, which in the end will restructure itself or crumble. All knowledge without love is a separation from being. Whilst the old program of the Dark Age runs out with the old Lightworkers, the Illuminati, and their plans of a world dictatorship controlling the world of finance, it will disintegrate with the changes on Earth. The new incarnated Lightworkers of the Galactic Confederation are already leading mankind into the new Golden Age. After the great transformation of mankind, the Space Brothers would like to welcome us as cosmic citizens into the Galactic Confederation of Free Planets.